What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary, and I'm here with my beautiful wife. Say hi, boo.
Hi, everyone. This is Akdi, and I'm from Turkey. And today, as part of our Black Month History series, we're reviewing the 24th.
Yes, this is a What year did this film come out? I don't have it right here. 2020. Okay, this film came out in August 21st, 2020, and it's about the Camp Logan Mutiny, which is also known as the Houston Riots of 1917. Basically, there was this all-black regiment of soldiers in Houston who revolted against their commanders and fought back against the racist white folks in their town who were terrorizing them and brutalizing them, and essentially went on a killing spree. And not a lot is known about this story in American history, and in fact, there's not a lot of information about the actual soldiers in this. So this is a fictionalized retelling of those events. Akdi and I watched the movie last night. I saw it before, and I could say that I enjoyed it, especially the ending, because the ending is so powerful. But the movie wasn't as good as I remember it being when I watched it back in like 2020 or 2021, a few years ago. But overall, it's still a good film. What did you think about it?
I liked it too, because we watched Glory right before this, I thought Glory was just fantastic, and kind of compared to that, it wasn't that good, but it was still a good, historical movie, and it still, told the story in a, fair way, I would say. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was still an inspirational story because it's something that happened. I don't think you can go that wrong with these type of movies because the story itself is so powerful.
Right.
But the acting was good. I liked the ending, so yeah, I enjoyed it overall.
Yeah. Speaking of Glory, I think the best way to describe this film is if Glory was a bit darker and also on Tubi. This movie has a certain amateur-ishness to it in some of the dialogue and in some of the actors. But in other parts of the film with the cinematography and the lighting and the certain shade that they have on this film, I think it makes the intensity of it go up a notch. So there's parts of it I was like, damn, Trey Byers, who plays the main character, Boston, Private Boston, the soldier. There's parts in here I was like, that boy deserves an Oscar. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And other times I'm like, did Tyler Perry make this?
I mean, the thing is, we watched this movie in two parts, in 2 nights. So the first time we watched it, I didn't notice those things. And then you told me this is like a Tubi version of Glory. Mm-hmm. And then after you told me, I couldn't, escape those parts. So I have to agree with you. But maybe if you never told me that, I wouldn't have thought about it. You know?
Yeah. No, there's this movie is pretty damn good, I would say, and I would recommend people watch it just so they get familiarized with the events that happened back in August 23rd, 1917, when these black soldiers, marched through Houston shooting at racist white folks. And I think this film is also great for just the fact that it gives some manliness or masculinity or some sort of agency or defense against white supremacy, because we've seen a million movies where black folks get beat up on, whipped on, chased out of town, and this movie actually turns that on its head, and it's made even more powerful that it's a true story. You know what I mean?
Yes, but it also somewhat highlights the fact that, when you respond violence with violence, it doesn't really add up to anything. Mm-hmm. Even though the story and how these soldiers ended up, it's inspirational and they still stood up for what they believed in. Mm-hmm. I think there were still some things that they regretted, and they make that also in the movie as well.
Yeah. Well, let's walk through the story a bit. So this movie takes place around the time of World War I in the Deep South in Texas. Basically, this 24th Infantry Regiment is organized mostly of black soldiers, and they're going there to prepare to go to the theater in Europe, or at least that's what some of the soldiers think. So they make it there, and the film centers on this one guy. His name is Corporal William Boston, and he's played by Trey Byers, and he's a light-skinned brother, and he's he's out there like digging the latrines with the other brothers out there. But some of the other guys start to have like issues with him because, you know, he talks fancy and stuff like that. And, you know, he actually was in France before he starts bragging to the guys he went to France, and you know he can't wait to go back out there and bring the fight to whoever they're fighting in World War One. And yeah, he gets into this argument with another guy. I believe his name is Walker, right? Walker is the so
Mo McRae.
Mo McRae plays Walker. He's like this dark-skinned brother who's he reminds me of Flip from Glory, right?
Yeah.
He's more you know, aggressive, a bit more street, and he starts to challenge Corporal Boston, right? What did you think about the opening scenes and getting to know some of the soldiers there? You know, they're like regular guys. They're like talking about, man, I can't wait to go to France. Hey, Boston, did you get them white French gals? You know what I mean? And some of the other soldiers are like, you know, they don't know that women, you know, give fellatio, and they're they're kind of like kids in a way, and kind of like ignorant too about the world, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you know, this is the generation where these people's parents were, you know, enslaved. Mm-hmm. And this is like the Jim Crow times, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm not mistaken. So they are like being introduced to the society, but not fully, because they're still black, and, you know, people still don't accept them, and they're still very much discriminated in every sense in their lives. But it was like also nice to see like this character like William Boston, and he's like this educated black man, right? And he's still like doing the same labor and same thing as some of the others that are not so educated. But you know, the conflict between Walker and Boston, it reminded me of the sentence that black people say all the time, like, we just don't unite. You know, we just like hate each other more, or we just like, you know, don't support each other and stuff like that. And I think this movie proves the otherwise at the end. But in the beginning, like, you can see that happening. Yeah.
One thing that I kind of didn't like about this film is this sort of color conflict going on with Boston and Walker, and basically Boston versus the whole regiment. Basically, most of the guys in the regiment think Boston is weird and different because he acts white and talks white and stuff like that. And I just felt like in this story, why bring this theme into it? It just felt a bit awkward, you know, to make that part of the storyline.
I don't think it's awkward, because that's how like white supremacy or any other like big force that divides people work. Like, they create conflict within that society. Those people are, you know, fighting or arguing or against each other that are for the same cause. But why are they fighting? Because, you know, Walker maybe thinks Boston is trying to be white. Or, you know, Boston is thinking Walker is trying to just hate on him because he's educated and things like that. So that's how like this system works. And I feel like it was like showing that, and I actually liked that they included that, because at the end we see that they still fight for the same thing.
I get
and
you.
They will still stand by each other.
I get you. I just think as the story builds, you know, it kind of gets a bit all over the place how they're dealing with, you know, Boston having to prove his blackness to some degree to these people in the regiment, and dealing with also this other main story here about black men taking the fight against white supremacy. You know what I mean? It just feels a bit awkward for me, you know?
Yeah.
I felt just a bit distracted by it. But yeah, basically, you know, the guys are there training in Houston, but they're also getting like disrespected by the local people. Like in the beginning, there's a scene when one of the soldiers is like taking a break, sitting next to this house where people are doing construction, and the white guys who are doing construction on the house like piss on him while he's eating a sandwich, which was like hella gross.
Yeah,
like,
it was very gross. He was eating his lunch.
Yeah, just minding his own business. His own pisses on you from the roof. Hella disrespectful. And there's one night when all the soldiers are like outside during, you know, just going out having fun. And the guys get on the local bus and they sit in the colored section. It's Boston and like two of the other, you know, soldiers he's with. And then Walker gets on the bus and he's like, shit, there's no space in the back. in the color section. I'm gonna sit up here with the white folks, and that causes a whole bunch of drama. The police come, they beat them up, and the police kick all the soldiers out of the bus. What did you think of those scenes?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, hard situation because they are technically on paper free, but they are also not. And I guess not even on paper, but they are freer than before. But they still have to, like, put up with all this stuff where they are treated like inhumane. And Walker actually, I think every other black person on that bus, like, agreed with him emotionally and psychologically, but at the same time, like, they know how South works and they know how America works and the world works. So it's like they wanted to help him, like, especially Boston. He wanted to help him, but at the same time, it's like helping another person, it could be your death, literally. Yeah. So it's like you can't really blame either side on acting on it or not responding to it either.
Right. I just like that scene because, we often think like, oh, Rosa Parks was like the first black woman to like sit in the front of a bus to try to fight segregation. But that was happening all the time. Like throughout segregation, throughout Jim Crow, anything, we always resisted, right? I believe there was a case of a man in Louisiana. I think it was the case of Plessy versus Ferguson, where this man from Louisiana, a black man, wanted to sit in the front part of a train that was for white folks, and they kicked him out because they said he was a Negro, right? And they took that to the Supreme Court. And then when they took that case to the Supreme Court from Louisiana, then that's when the Supreme Court said, yes, separate but equal is legal in the land. And then we had like 100 years of Jim Crow. And that all started from Plessy versus Ferguson, a case just like that. You know what I mean? Now, the part of the story that they don't tell is that the reason why that black man, Plessy, wanted to sit in the front of the train is because he was hella light-skinned. So he was like, I'm passing as white. But somebody found out he was actually black. So he wasn't doing it for civil rights. He was doing it because I'm white too, guys. And they said, no. If I remember it right, if I remember the story right. But that's all I thought about with Walker. I mean, I always hate in these movies when we do historical black movies, when we make racist white folks like these, really ignorant sounding, country redneck types. I hate that, because that's not how racism works. No, even back then, white folks were very like passive aggressive and polite. Of course they were saying nigger and shit like that, but they were also like, now come on, boy, I don't want to do this now, but if you don't get up, gonna have to cut your nuts off. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't just these, ignorant, barely understandable people talking to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's the South, so just automatically people have that accent or the way of talking where I feel like most people just, judge that it's like they're not educated. Right. When someone has that accent. But I feel like in the movie, like in the army itself and like in the officials, they also had those, high-ranking, educated people who are also racist, other than Colonel Norton. Yeah.
Now, going to the next part, right, where, by the way, at the beginning of this movie, like there's this tension going on because, there was this race riot that happened in East St. Louis not too long before the events of this film, where basically a Rosewood situation happened, or like a Black Wall Street situation happened. A bunch of white folks go into a town and destroy this city. And so, one of Boston's best friends is Big Joe. And Big Joe, came from East St. Louis, and there's more related to that. But that's always in the atmosphere. Like the newspapers are pointing at that, and people reference it here and there. So we're also introduced to more characters. We're introduced to Sergeant Hayes, who's played by McKelty Williamson, who I believe is like a very good actor. Do you remember what we saw him in?
No.
He was Silas in Holiday Heart.
Oh.
That was Silas in Holiday Heart. Now he's gotten much fatter. He's not as slim, and you know what I mean. But he was still very good in this film. And so
he was also in Forrest Gump and Fences.
Yes, he was. He is Bubba Gump. He is like that all-star guy. He's in every great Like, if you get McKelty in your film, 9 times out of 10, he's going to steal the show. And he low-key did in this film.
Okay, he was in 12 Angry Men, the 97 version.
Yeah. Shout out to McKelty Williamson. He is low-key, like, one of the greatest black actors of all time.
He was very good in this movie, too.
Yeah, so basically we're introduced to Sergeant Hayes, played by McKelty Williamson. And, you know, he is this colonel or the sergeant who doesn't really like Corporal Boston, right? He thinks that Boston is uppity, that Boston, you know, thinks he's not a Negro. And there's a reference to Fagin. Fagin was this black soldier when America invaded the Philippines and we took it over and almost made it a colony, right? This black soldier deserted to the other side to fight against the Americans for the Philippines, right? And Sergeant Hayes doesn't like that. Maybe not because he hates Filipinos, but because he hates Negroes who think that they are better than what they are, right? Which is also another big theme in this film. But what did you think about getting introduced to Sergeant Hayes? And also when Boston goes to the dance and, you know, he meets his lover, Marie.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is another conflict couple with Boston because Boston and Walker have beef, and then Boston and Hayes have beef as well.
Yeah.
But it's like also a different kind of beef because I feel like Hayes, yeah, maybe he also thinks that Boston is a bit uppity, but at the same time, he's like higher than him in ranking.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's trying to tell him, like, you're just a black person in the South. You're just another black body, you know, and stuff like that. But, yeah, I mean, of course, with the nature of the movie, I kind of disliked his character at the beginning. But once again, like, you understand every perspective because there's just the immense amount of, like, psychological stress that they go through every day. And, yeah, when it comes to Marie, like, she was so cute. Like, her character was super cute. She's, like, this piano player, and, like, the way she's dressing, like, she's a bit nerdy. And, like, she's also, I feel like, very honest.
Yeah.
And, you know, she has the cute Southern accent. I just really liked her. And she's played by Naomi King, right?
Yeah, Aja Naomi King. Shout out to her. She's pretty much like the only woman in this film.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, shout out to Marie. She was cute as well. But back to Sergeant Hayes. You know, I really like his character. I mean, he reminds me of my dad. And now that you've met my dad, I think you could understand a bit.
Yeah, I liked his character later on in the movie. But yeah.
Yeah. At the beginning, he's like really hard on him as well. Just continuing on in the story, basically, you know, Boston is getting suggested to go to like officer training school, like in Iowa, right? But his commander, the leader of the regiment, I forgot his name, Lieutenant Colonel Norton, who's played by Thomas Hayden Church. You know, he's telling Boston, you know, you're better than this. You can lead Negro men. You can show them a better way. But Boston says, I wanted to come here, be treated like a soldier and like a man. And there won't be any racial problems in the city of Houston if the white people here treat us like men and soldiers. And so Colonel Norton says, you know, I respect that you have these ambitions and goals and, you know, best of luck to you, right? And so, yeah, Boston ends up getting promoted to colonel. What did you think about his relationship between, you know, Colonel Norton and Boston?
Yeah, I mean, Norton is like as much of an ally you could be at that time. I feel like that's what he represents because he truly, you know, I feel like he sees at least Boston as a man, while I think he kind of sees the others not as good as Boston, just because Boston like knows French and, you know, he's educated and stuff like that. And I feel like, you know, he's sort of just judging people by their education and by their speech.
Right.
And that's that. But he can't really do much because, you know, politics is still politics and everyone around him is like extremely racist. So he's just trying to manage both situations, which I felt like he was being a bit hypocritical. And I felt like he was kind of making promises that he can't keep.
Yeah. One of the funniest things Norton said to Boston, he said, you can understand both sides. And I thought it was funny because it was like, I thought Norton was assuming that Boston was mixed when he could just be light skinned. Like, you understand, right? I mean, you're part white, right?
Yeah.
I was like, that's such a white thing to say. Right? You understand both sides. I think Norton had the worst dialogue in this film. And, Thomas Hayden Church, he's an okay actor. It's just the way his lines were delivered to me, they didn't hit. I think he is like one of the low points of this film. Just the way his lines were delivered.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was his lines because, he... For the first part of the movie, we see him a lot, but then, like, the second half, we don't really see him that much until the end.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, it didn't bother me, but it could have been more emotion, just a bit more oomph.
Well, a bit more emotion, a bit more delivery, and not some awkward lines. Like, there's a line later in this film where his wife says, "Your brother won't do that. He is the general." And then he literally says the next line, like, "My brother, the general, will do it." I'm like, oh, who wrote this for him? Like, it's so bad. It's so bad. But, basically, I made a mistake earlier. Boston didn't get it promoted to colonel. He became, like, a military police officer. So his job is to, like, monitor the soldiers. And if there are any problems with soldiers in the city or on base, they get arrested by Boston, right? So he's
corporal. No?
Yeah, he's a corporal, but he's now a military police officer.
Okay.
Yeah. And, we also find out more about Sergeant Hayes' backstory when Boston, like, confronts him and he says, like, "Yo, what's your problem with me?" And Hayes goes off on this drunken rant, which is probably one of two major scenes that Hayes has, 2 or 3 major scenes, where he basically says, like, he was with President Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, when he, like, stormed San Juan Hill in Cuba and stuff like that. And, that was a major moment to have Teddy Roosevelt fighting along with black soldiers. Teddy Roosevelt was, like, one of the most prominent presidents, right? He's on Mount Rushmore, I think. And, Teddy Roosevelt ended up becoming president and just left his black soldiers, there. You know what I mean? Didn't help them go up. So Sergeant Hayes feels betrayed, and he's sort of kind of like warning Boston, like, oh, you think you can just, talk and get your way in with these white folks when they look at you like any other Negro too. So that was a very powerful scene. Any comments?
Yeah. No, every time he makes a speech, I think it's powerful. And that also, like, proves what we talked about earlier of him being a great actor. Mm-hmm. I mean, from what I understood, like, there is a beef between them, but Boston, like, still understands why Hayes is, like, this angry. Mm-hmm. And it's like different perspectives. Hayes is a pessimist, and Boston is an optimist.
That's kind of true.
Yeah, because Hayes have been through, like, the reigns of racism and life and stuff like that. So,
and if I could add on, Walker would be a nihilist. Yeah. Like, I would say Walker's like, I don't care, like, we're N-words in this world, and I'm gonna do whatever happens. You know what I mean?
So it's like 3 different perspectives on being black and how, like, black life is, you know? So, that's what I sort of realized.
Yeah. No, very true, very true. Yeah. So, going forward in the story, speaking of Walker, right? Walker and Boston, like, end up having major beef because Boston goes to Marie's house one night bringing flowers and singing Drake songs. And then Marie opens the door and Not Like Us is playing. And Walker is standing right behind her, like, wearing his, like, boxers and a do-rag, saying, "What up?" Say, Boston. I see you like to come. Oh, that was great. That was one of the funniest scenes, man. Because that will get me so hot. And so, I would be so pissed. And so, Boston and Walker had, like, this big-ass fight during, like, Child Time. And I really like that fight scene, too. I really like all the action scenes in this movie because they look so visceral and real. Yeah. But, they ended up getting their ass whooped by... like the lieutenant who's above them.
Lockhart. Yeah,
Lieutenant Lockhart, Major Lockhart, whatever. He whoops on them with a bag of grapefruit tied to a lamppost. And I was like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
So it was interesting, right? They had beef with each other, but they both got punished by, like, the white man, right? I think there's something there. But any comments on that?
Yeah, I was, like, I was sad for Boston, you know, when Walker opened the door.
I wasn't.
Because, like, when they had, like, their first moment with Marie, I was like, oh, like, that's so cute. And it's, like, you know, one of those old romances where they're not hooking up from the first date.
Women don't want that. They want bad boys. They want bad boys.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay. I was just mad at Walker, you know, for doing that. And, yeah. And also, like, calling Maria hoe.
He
because,
did.
like, she was
He
not.
did.
Turns out she was not.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. The grapefruit scene, of course, it was painful. And that's, like, the first time I've seen someone get beat with grapefruits. So that was, like, I was also like, what the hell?
That is so random, but it feels so real.
It does.
You know what I mean?
It's like a whole bag of grapefruits.
Yeah.
Like, imagine someone hitting you with 5 kilos of grapefruit.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, and it made me feel like also like, oh, like, because the slavery is over, now they're not like
Whipping
people, but now they're hitting them with grapefruits.
Uh-huh.
It's like, you know, it was tragically comedic at the same time.
It was tragically comedic, also a bit like, you know, very old school. You know what I mean? I don't know if you have this in Turkey, but in America, like, you'll get hit with anything. Like, you'll get hit with, your parents will hit you with anything.
We have the slipper.
Well, you have the slippers, you get hit with
the remote.
And the remote control. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I could tell Major Lockhart was raised by a black mama.
Wow.
During slavery. During slavery, man. He was sucking from a black titty and watching niggas getting hit with grapefruit by their big black mammies. Okay.
No. I mean, like,
I'm sorry.
you know, Lockhart will become more important later on.
Yeah.
But he's like the person after Norton.
Mm-hmm.
But he is like a racist guy. Like everyone else.
Yeah, he's pretty much racist because, you know, later on when Colonel Norton sits down with Boston and says, you know, what happened about that fight? He said, nothing, sir, right? And he was dismissed. You know, Norton talks to Lockhart and says, you know, you're going to treat these men like men and stop abusing them and stuff like that. And Norton really seems to believe that these soldiers will fight in Europe, but then Lockhart says, come on, you can't really believe they're going to send these black men out there to go and fight in this war, right? They're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. You know
like,
what I mean?
just like Glory, the men in Glory wanted to fight, right? And also these men in the 24th also want to go to France. They want to fight for their country and stuff like that. And I feel like a part of it is like they just want to get out of America. Like, I feel like they're thinking, I'd rather die on the battlefield in France than stay here and get killed by a racist white people.
Right. You know what's so interesting? Literally today, I was reading this book, Black and British, like I've been reading for the past few weeks. And they're talking about how during this same time in World War I, there were a bunch of black men from the West Indies, Jamaica, Barbados, Bahamas, etc. They wanted to go fight for the British in World War I, right? And so these guys are doing everything. They're like stowing away on ships. They're like, you know, trying to get out there to the UK and begging the government officials that have them there in those colonies to go and fight. And all that, you know, protesting and begging, they actually ended up forming a black regiment that I believe was the second black regiment in British history after the slaves that were freed off slave ships when the British were stopping slavery on the west coast of Africa like 70 years before, right? So that was a historic moment. Now, on one hand, you could say, why are black men fighting for the British Empire, right? That's the same empire that put them in slavery and stuff like that. We have to remember, like, there was a lot of poverty in Jamaica and Bahamas and Barbados, and people were ignorant back then, not like how we know now. Like, the understanding of empire was totally different. But I'm sorry I'm ranting, but it's like, you know, very, you know, crazy that at the same time it was happening in America, it was happening in the UK.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But I think it's more than like, you know, being colonized and stuff like that. It's like now they're part of this society, and in this society, especially at that time, and this is a big theme in this movie, is that, you know, men are supposed to be soldiers, men are supposed to fight, and it's like in this society, if you're a soldier, if you're fighting for your country, you are respected. And I feel like that's part of trying to gain the respect of the society, because it's like one of the options they have. They are thinking maybe, you know, if I'm a martyr, if I'm a general, if I'm a soldier, then people, if I come back, will respect me now because I fought for them.
Yeah, because...
And, you know, unfortunately, that was not the case. But,
Yeah.
you know.
It's also, you know, very, very, very important to remember in context. Like, at this time, one of the biggest stereotypes about black men was that they were cowards. It was like, black men can't go out there and fight because they'll get scared. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, like you're saying, Akdi, to prove your manhood by going out on the battlefield was important as well. So...
Yeah.
Very, very, there's a lot of history going on here, and there's so many other stories, you know, similar to this, like this, that could have movies made about them, etc. But, yeah, basically, you know, the Colonel Norton, you know, he has connections at the War Department because his brother is like a major general and his like father is at the War Department, similar to the white guy from Glory, right? Like, you know, daddy's connections helped him become like a commander or something. But because Norton is leading this black regiment, he'll probably never get promoted, right? And so he has this line when he's talking to his wife. He says, well, I guess I'll just be a colonel. I guess I won't be a general, right? And I was like, I don't believe that. I don't believe any white man would do that. And I was proven right later in this film.
Yeah.
But I really just disliked Norton's scenes. They could have been done a bit better, I would say. But any comments on those?
Yeah, I wasn't that bothered by him, but he was mediocre. Like, you know, his lines at least, not maybe himself as an actor, but yeah.
All right.
But there was something that happened, like, before that.
Yeah, no, there was a bunch that happened. I'm just covering that. So anyway, yeah, there was a major event that happened. So a few days after Boston becomes a military police, he's told that, hey, downtown, one of the soldiers was like killed or something like that, right? And so he rushes downtown with his buddy Big Joe, and Big Joe and Boston show up, and the same white guys who have been, you know, pissing on the soldiers and terrorizing them before is there with a knife in his hand. And a dead black man on the ground, right? And so Boston tries to arrest the racist white man with the beard, and you know, the white guys are getting real like anxious, like, you better not touch him. You can't be, black men can't arrest white men. And so Boston says, you know, he grabs the white guy and says, you know, if you don't let me arrest him, I'll have this military base leave. Are your paychecks worth this one white guy's life? And they all say no. Meanwhile, Big Joe, Boston's buddy, is running away. Boston takes him to the police station and tells the police chief, like, I have arrested this man for murder. Here is the murder weapon. And and he hands him over to the police, and the police say, arrest him. And the police try to arrest Boston. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
That was hilarious, right? And yeah, Boston is making like a lot of enemies in the town because he's actually trying to enforce the law. What did you think about those scenes?
Yeah, I think that was a powerful scene because it's like Boston could have died trying to arrest that white man, and he still did it. And also, it sort of created this mystery when Boston looks back and Big Joe is running, like, and he's like, "What? Why the hell is he running?" So there, it created that mystery.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it was I was scared. I thought like they were gonna attack Boston and things like that. And yeah, the scene where like Lockhart tells the other guys to like arrest him, and they reach out for Boston. That was hilarious.
That was funny.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
I don't think it was intended to be funny because I don't think there's any intentional comedy in this film.
Yeah,
it's a straightforward drama.
It just showed like how automatic the racism was.
Yeah,
you know, like they automatically reached for the black guy.
That's hilarious. That was really funny.
And yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting for him to get arrested.
Yeah. Once again, I like the intensity in the action sequences because, like, the scene when he shows up to the dead body and, like, the camera is shaky and, like, there's dust everywhere and stuff like that. Those scenes are, like, very visceral. You know what I mean? Really like that. And, yeah, so moving forward, you know, Boston is trying to, like, rekindle his relationship with Mary, but before he can do that, he has to get right with Walker. So, Walker comes to Boston one day in his tent after, Boston becomes the first black man to ever arrest a white man for murdering a black person. And, Walker says, like, why you act so different? You ain't like us. You a lighty. And then we get Boston's like whole backstory. Like basically his two parents were educators during Reconstruction. And Reconstruction was this about 15-year era after the end of the Civil War, which happened in 1865, when the federal government sent military soldiers down into the South to stop white folks from being racist, to free the last slaves, to open up schools for black folks, to create banks for black folks. Actually, America has never been good to black folks since after Reconstruction. Like Reconstruction was when we had the first black governors, like Louisiana, my state, elected the first black governor ever, right? Mm-hmm. And many other states sent black senators. Like there are some states that have not had a black senator since Reconstruction, like my state of Louisiana, right? And so his parents became teachers during Reconstruction, but when Reconstruction ended, the white folks took over, then Jim Crow happens, all that stuff. So his parents sent him to Paris to get educated. And that's how Boston ends up like speaking French and being very educated and just talking different than everybody else around him. But Boston says, I didn't want to run away. I didn't want to just live in Europe. I'm coming back to America to be with my roots, to be with my people, and to prove my manhood. Now, I like that scene, but I'm also like, boy, you better stay in France. Stay in France. Run. Get out. Get out. I'm screaming at I'm screaming at that scene in my mind so much. But then, Walker says, all right, bruh, I see you, man. You cool peoples. Yeah. All right, we bet. All right. And then, they become friends. And that's how Drake and Kendrick patched it up.
Wow. Okay. And also Walker says, like, I wasn't, with Marie in that way, and she's not a hoe, and she's a good person and stuff like that. So they were just like friends, I guess, or something. Yeah. But I feel like that scene explained like Boston's positivity towards everything, because his parents were brought up by that time Reconstruction, and there was hope at that time after coming out from such a dark time, So it explains his positivity towards like black life, and I think it's I also want to scream to him like, stay in Paris, stay in France, but at the same time it's honorable like what he did, because I feel like you also have that, for example, within yourself. Not that you want to go back to America, but you still want to give back to black people. You still want to like do a lot for black Americans specifically. So, it's not that different. It's just at that time he couldn't open a YouTube channel. Maybe if he could, then he could have just stayed in France. Yeah, man. No, but Boston would be, it's always the light-skinned brothers that are always the most militant. I don't know why. Boston, you had everything, man. We were rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. But yeah, it's, Boston's situation is so interesting because I think, just to sum it up, I'm not going to go on a long rant. He's just this guy who wants to feel connected to something. And I think maybe in Paris, he was never really French enough. He was probably the only black face in a lot of places. So he's like, I want to go be with my people. And you know what? Like, I can understand that because like sometimes I end up going on YouTube or on Wikipedia, right? And I'm just looking at, man, I wonder what life is like in Nebraska. You know what I mean? Or like, damn, I wonder how many black folks are in Maine. You know what I mean? Like, I just be like randomly thinking about home in a certain way that's romantic and nostalgic. And then I have to knock myself out of it, right? And I think maybe for Boston, right, he fell in love with blackness that is a part of his ancestry from abroad and that he felt detached from. And he wants to go recapture that. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So, yeah, all right. But, Yeah, more happens after, Walker says, all right, bro, you cool. Marie ain't no hoe. So Boston catches up with Marie and takes her on a nice date to a fancy restaurant to eat pork chops and tea. And Marie is kind of shy because, like, she says, this is where the fancy colored folks eat. And Boston is like, all you got to do to be a fancy colored folk is be colored.
They're so cute.
Some of this dialogue. See, this is the thing. You have like a powerful ass scene with Boston talking to Walker, and then you have the pork chop scene.
No, but that made sense because when she asked that question, I was thinking that's kind of true. Because it's like, even if you're a fancy colored folk, I guess, like, you're still treated as inhumane. So, like, what is the difference then? It's just like the only difference is, can you afford it?
I guess there is something there because, like, Boston's whole thing is like, it doesn't matter if I went to the Sorbonne or if I grew up in, Mississippi, right? Like, we're all black, right?
Yeah.
And you guys are the ones trying to separate me from my blackness because I talk proper or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess so. But it's just the way it was shot. You know what I mean? Like,
I liked it. First of all, I shipped them.
You shipped them?
Yeah, because, like, after every scene, I was like, oh, like, that's so nice. And they're so cute and they're so pure. And, like, after the dinner date, they go and they're, like, Marie is swinging on the swing.
Yeah, he's, like, pushing her.
And Boston is pushing her, and they're talking about, like, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just so cute. They're just so wholesome.
That's hilarious. That's funny. Okay, well, just saying to a girl, like, I just want to know, do you like pork chops? And she's like, and she said, I do like pork chops.
But it was also like, it's so wholesome because, he's this guy who had, black and white chicks in Paris, but like he ends up falling in love with a Southern girl,
Yeah, big
it's
booty
kind
thing.
of like a full circle moment.
Yes, indeed. I'm sorry.
Oh, God.
I'm sorry. So, anyway, moving forward in the story, basically, Colonel Norton gets the news that his father died. And his brother comes to town to deliver the news. And, his brother is saying, like, I can get you a regiment and get you out there in Europe so that you can go up in rank. And his Norton says, like, why don't I just take the 24th? I can take my men. And his brother proves to be racist and says, like, you know what? These guys are supposed to be cleanup crew. They're not supposed to be actual soldiers, right? And so Norton is left with this choice, like, damn, do I actually sell out for the rank or do I stick with my men? And he decides to
sell out.
He sells out. He says, in the very next scene, he hands over control of the all-black regiment to the guy who could be a stunt double for Adolf Hitler. Like, Abner looks literally like Hitler and acts like it.
It's the same guy that beat the people with grapefruit.
Yes, the same man who beat black men with grapefruit is now in charge of ruling them. Sounds a lot like America, right? Sounds.
It does.
Some things never change. And so, Norton comes and talks to Boston and is like, come on, man, just come with me. Come to officer training school. You can help lead the men. But, Boston says no. Like, I'm here to be with my soldiers. I'm not going to sell out like you, pussy. And, yeah. Any comments?
I don't think, he was still thinking about it. He said no, but it's like, it's like he was worried. Boston was worried because Norton is like the only white guy who can defend them and who can like complain and complain to War Department about certain things. But if he's gone and he knows Lockhart is racist, how is he gonna able to protect how is he gonna be able to protect his crew?
Yeah.
So it's like he's like, okay, do I go to? And also Norton says something like, if you go to Des Moines and become an official officer, then you can do better things for your people.
Yeah.
Than if you stay here. So I feel like that's what made him like think.
Yeah. I just have the feeling at this point in the film, I had this feeling like Boston really just wants to be a martyr rather than he does want to be a soldier. I believe he's so hyped up off idealism and the fantasy he's created in his head of being just another good black man to uplift the race, right? Because earlier in the film, he's caught reading this book called Up from Slavery. Thank you. And that book was written by Booker T. Washington. Now, Akdi, I want to ask you, where do you remember hearing Booker T. before?
From the movie with the train.
With the train.
Rosewood. Yes.
The movie with the train. Yes, because that was the most important part of it.
Sorry, I suck at movie names.
This is what I think. I think both the guy from Rosewood, Ving Rhames' character from Rosewood, and also Boston in this film are hyped off Booker T. Washington's idea that black men, if we just work hard enough and we are good Negroes, we can uplift the race and white folks will respect us. And I think both of those films show that idea is total bullshit.
Oh my God, that's such a great take.
Yes.
Look at you with your brain.
Because he's reading the book from Booker T. and in Rosewood, he rides in on a horse named Booker T. And both of those black men ended up in destruction.
Wow. Yeah. I think it's also a part of them trying to prove the other people wrong. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like Boston is also trying to prove Hayes wrong and Walker wrong by sticking up to, his position. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I am not some uppity white want to be, a black person. Like, I am, I am with you. I am here. I will grind with you. Mm-hmm. So I feel like there's also that, part as well.
Yeah. Like I said, he's hooked up off idealism. He's read too many books. You know what I mean? Like, I encourage reading, but not Booker T.
So, like, you're saying if you were Boston, you would definitely, without a doubt, go to Des Moines.
I think the fundamental flaw of the idea that even if he goes to Des Moines and becomes a great officer, white supremacy will not just kneel or bend over just because black folks are now good, honest men. We've always been good, honest men. So I think it wouldn't matter whether he stayed a soldier or went to Des Moines. I think he should focus on his own personal happiness and also actively campaign to confront what he doesn't like. You know what I mean?
I mean, he's going to do that in both places.
No,
which would you prefer? Like, because in Des Moines, he's still going to stand up for black rights, but he's also going to be studying and becoming an officer. So he will have to work under white people. But so does he in here as well.
Right. I think if he really wants to do that, I think the best choice for me, if I were Boston, would be to drop out of the army, sign out, and really seek to challenge and fight, like be an activist to some degree. He seems to be smart, be a lawyer or something like that. Like, I don't believe in reforming the system from the inside, which I think Boston wants to do. If you don't like something in society, just like the same way we don't like something in life, we confront it, we challenge it, we talk about it.
Yeah, well, you have to also understand, like, that time. Were there any black lawyers at that time?
Of course, yes.
They were?
Yes, of course. There were black lawyers, there were black activists. I mean, Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, W.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington. There were people out there, stomping the ground and making it happen. You know what I mean? It was dangerous, of course. Lynchings were around. I mean, people were getting killed. But you confront what you don't like, right?
Yeah.
And also you do what also makes you happy as well. Those are my two, that's how I live my black life. You know what I mean? Talk about what you don't like, confront what you don't like, change your situation, take responsibility, but also don't just assume that by you being a good black person that somehow white supremacy or racism will just disappear.
Yeah.
Or that enough of us following our path are going to be perfect as well. You know what I mean? We have a long road. That's my thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry if I was ranting.
No, that's a good thing. That's a good take.
Yeah.
I like that.
But continuing on, there was also some more revelations about what happened to Big Joe, because Boston talks to Big Joe and says, "Why'd you run away?" And Big Joe says basically his whole family was killed in a race massacre. His mama's house got shot up, his sister and her newborn son disappeared, and Big Joe basically says, he says something very honest. When I see white folks, I'm scared. Like, I am terrified, right? And that was a very powerful scene too, because what I think that scene did was like show like within a lot of black men is a great fear we have about white supremacy, right? Like, niggas would rather shoot each other than shoot the police.
Yeah.
You know, we'd rather go to war with Bloods and Crips than we would the U.S. government, you know?
Yeah.
Because we're scared of the white folks.
Yeah, and also it was like, I thought it was so perfect that they chose Big Joe's character to do that, because he's literally big.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, especially at that time, you know, a lot of muscular, big black folks were killed because they were seen as intimidated, aggressive, or, you know, like an animal and stuff like that. So, but in the inside, when we look at Big Joe, he's like very scared and he's very emotional. Like, he's an emotional person, and even his voice is like so soft. So it's like totally breaking that stereotype of, like, you know, big black man being scary and being aggressive, because he's the total opposite.
Yeah, total opposite. I mean, he has been pacified and through mental brutalization, and also the terror that has been inflicted upon him as well. There's also this scene where Boston talks to Marie and basically says, like, officer training school, I don't know if I should do it. You know, I'll just be another Negro in a high place with a black face, but not doing anything for the race, you know what I mean? And that's also when Marie says, you know, you shouldn't worry about what other people think about you, because, you know, a long time ago, this guy at my daddy's church took advantage of me. Essentially, Marie got raped back in the day, and her father blamed her. And Marie has always kept that shame on her since then, right? And yeah, that sort of gives Boston sort of maybe like the courage to confront Sergeant Hayes and say, hey, I want to go to officer training school. And, you know, Sergeant Hayes gives him another long speech about, you know, you ain't no different than us. You ain't better than us. I guess now you want to, you know, tuck your tail and run away. And, you know, Boston actually gives it back to him and says, and you think you better with your yes, sir, no, sir, won't even look a white man in the eye, and sort of like really reads Sergeant Hayes too. But, yeah, actually, you know, Boston ends up making his choice to go to officer training school. What do you think about any of those scenes?
And also Hayes says that the guy that Boston arrested, the white guy, the judge ended up like letting him go.
Yeah, yeah.
Which also like makes Boston, you know, a bit more hopeless. But I liked Marie's story, and just overall in general, I like that we got backstories of certain characters.
Yes.
So that was, I think, also something that you enjoyed as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, Marie's story really encouraged Boston, because Marie essentially, like what her story said, that was that just because some people think that I'm something I'm not going to change my path. And I feel like Boston was worried, like I said, about what Walker might think, or what Hayes might think, or the others. Because at this point, Boston is like the Will Smith of the of the 24th. You know, everyone loves him. Everyone looks up to him. He has like a bit of a higher rank, and yeah, and he's like trying to protect everyone and stuff. So I think he was very worried about other black people might consider him a traitor. And you know, when Marie said that, you know you're not a traitor, so why are you worrying about it? So you know.
Yeah, she definitely was the good woman he needed at that time to sort of like give him the confidence to make a decision that wouldn't be made based on emotion, right? Because up to this point, Boston's emotions are telling him, I committed to this. I can't be a sellout. I can't be a sellout, right? And I think there is a qualitative difference between the Colonel selling out and Boston selling out, right? Because I think the Colonel doing it, you know, we can't expect a white person to like just give up their privilege and everything they have for the sake of us, right? We would like that to be, but that we can't bank our hopes on that. You know what I mean? With Boston doing it, you know, maybe it is true that maybe a black sergeant or a corporal or general, whatever, can make a difference, right? Because, you know, being in that room, maybe, once again, I don't believe in changing the system from the inside, right? But he can maybe do something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe. And I'm putting that just maybe out there.
I mean, it's done for different reasons, because Norton is doing for the money, in the title.
Right.
And Boston is doing because like he's thinking, how can I make, you know, black people better?
But also his own personal happiness as well. Like we as black people, we only have one life just like everybody else in this world.
Yeah.
And we should be doing things that make us happy. I only think it's the bad decision if it makes him unhappy to go to officer training school. If he's happier with the guys in the 24th, stay there. You know what I mean?
And I think there's one more important thing between Boston and Marie. This happened when they first met, but Boston basically told Marie that because she's a musician, that she should go to New York and she can, like, you know, play with the greats there, and she can attend the art school and things like that. And Marie basically says, you know, this is the only place I know. This is my house. This is my home. I can't really leave here. And so, like, Boston asks Marie to come with her, and Marie says yes. If only I can bring my piano. Like,
can I bring my piano?
Yeah. So it's like, at the same time, I feel like Boston encouraged Marie to take this next step.
Yeah.
Because Marie was so comfortable and safe with Boston.
So basically the most major part of this film happens around, you know, the hour mark or so. Downtown in the city, the wild racist police are like chasing a group of black men, and they're shooting at them, and they end up almost shooting this woman and her baby as she's sitting on the front porch, right? And so you know, the woman yells at the cops like, hey, stop shooting, you almost hit my baby. The racist cop gets off his horse, comes up and like smacks this woman up and down and like drags her out and arrests her and throws her on the horse. And then one of the soldiers of the 24th jumps on the police officer and starts whooping his ass and stuff like that. The police officer's assistant, you know, this big brolic guy, I forgot his name.
Derek Russo.
Yeah, Derek Russo is the actor, but the character's name Evans, right? Evans comes and like beats up the guy. Boston finds out about this. He goes downtown and he is like, "Where is my man?" And you know, the police chief says, "I don't know," right? And so, you know, him and the police chief get into a fight. Boston, like, you know, throws dirt in his eye and like runs away. And, you know, Boston ends up getting like caught and arrested as well. And the rumor starts to spread through the 24th that two of the soldiers, Boston and the other guy who fought the police, were killed, right? And now the soldiers are getting really nervous and anxious, right? Because they're hearing that the white folks are going to come and kill them in the town. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, that was a very powerful scene with the woman and her baby, because it's literally like something everyone would agree is that we shouldn't kill babies or we shouldn't endanger babies.
Maybe. I think Netanyahu might have some caveats.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Sarah Netanyahu.
It should be a common sense. I mean, let's say it should be.
It should be.
But, you know, it was something that really you today at least, you feel like, you know, this should not happen in any circumstances, because we're talking about a freaking baby and a woman and, you know, the baby's mom. So that was very heartbreaking to see. For one second, like, it was very full of tension, because I thought the police officer, his name is Cross, I thought he was going to kill the baby. And I was like, please, no, please, like, don't. Screaming inside of me. It was going to get
real dark.
Yeah. And then, yeah, it was very scary. And I actually, because we don't really see what happens to Boston. Like, we see him running from the police, from Cross and Evans. And then the scene is cut and they tell us that he's dead.
Yeah.
And they killed him. So
and you can believe it too.
Yeah.
I can believe it too, because at this point in the film, Boston was the main character. But the only thing I knew going into this film is that this event happened. And I was thinking, oh, Boston got killed, and that caused the soldiers to go into the town and start murdering people too. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I didn't know where it was going, honestly. I really thought Boston died. But go ahead.
Yeah. And one thing about the police officers, just before our recording, the second police officer, Evans, who's played by Derek Russo, we like checked out his Instagram. Yeah. And he's like the alliest of allies.
Yes, like his first pinned picture is him, you know, looking very brolic, wearing like a Black Lives Matter t-shirt. Can you read his bio on Instagram?
Yeah, his bio says actor, stuntman, activist, chef, hates white supremacy and dogmatic religion, loves justice, hashtag Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, Black Lives Matter. And yeah, he has like a whole wardrobe of Black Lives Matter t-shirts.
Yes.
There's like 10 of them.
And the interesting thing is when you scroll his page, it's like as soon as he posted the 24th, he like became super radicalized. And he's been radicalized since then. Like
yeah. I mean, it seems like he's always been a lefty, but like after this movie, he's like constantly posting things like defending Black lives.
Right. I think also what's forgotten about this film is that this film came out in what year? 2020, right? And that was the height of, you know, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, right? And the crazy thing is a lot of people at that time sort of just, oh, that was a fad. Black Lives Matter hashtag for like 3 months and then it's over, right? We solved racism, guys, but you know, he's kept that same energy.
He is. Like, he's standing up for Palestine. He has, like, a whole thread of Palestinian things. And just, like, that's the only thing he's wearing is Black Lives Matter t-shirt.
And also, well, he's also wearing nothing because he has, like, this Instagram picture where he's, like, butt-ass naked. Like,
yeah. Well, he's, like, a bodybuilder.
Yeah, he's like a bodybuilder dude. So shout out to that guy as well. And, yeah, man, like, this film is important not only for the moment that it's depicting, but also for the moment when it came out as well, right? Because, you know, this came out in a very seminal year. Like, they're going to be writing about 2020, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, all those protests. Breonna Taylor as well, justice for Breonna Taylor. And, so basically, the soldiers, when they're told that Boston died and maybe the other soldier is dead as well, the captain walks in, the Abner, Lockhart. Lockhart walks in and finds the soldiers like in the armory. They're like getting guns and stuff like that. And he starts yelling at Sergeant Hayes like, what the hell are these people doing and stuff like that. Actually, no. Before then, they were shooting. Lockhart told the soldiers, hey, you know, we don't know what's happening, but you know, you
There's
guys.
This rumor that a white mob is coming for them.
Yeah.
And it's basically like chaos, and like Big Joe is screaming like they're coming.
No, because they start shooting. Remember, like Lockhart sits down at his desk after talking to the soldiers out in the rain, and Lockhart says, "I'm gonna go out downtown and find out exactly what happened, and I promise you guys, I'm gonna get the police captain fired who did this to our soldiers, right? But until then, y'all remain calm and stay on base." Lockhart goes inside to have a drink, and then bullets start whizzing by, like his glass of whiskey blows up in his hand or something like that. And then that's when Big Joe says,
"They're coming!"
And then all the soldiers start running to the armory. They start getting guns from Sergeant Hayes, and Lockhart loses his mind. And probably one of the most intense scenes, because, you know, Hayes really doesn't look the white man in the eyes. Like, he's looking down like, sir, there's a mob of white folks coming. I don't know what to do, but I's gonna make sure my man's protected. And Lockhart saying, God damn it, soldier, you listen right now. You tell these men to get their black asses back outside and put those guns up. Oh, it was so intense. It was so beautiful. What'd you think about those scenes?
That was so intense. And I love Michael T. Williamson for doing that acting. Like, he was shaking, but he was not looking at his face. Except until the very last line, when he said, like...
Give me your key.
Yeah, when he said, give me your key, and he gave his key and looked him in his eye, like...
Yeah.
It's like, it was like, once you finish the movie, you feel like that's when Hayes saw what was going to happen. And, like, looked Lockhart in his eyes and basically told him, like, this is on you.
Yeah.
If anyone dies after this, this is on you.
Yeah. We also have to remember, though, by the way, that Hayes lost his eye, remember?
Yeah.
He said, like, so he partially can't see, but one of them is. And I also was thinking about that, but go ahead.
And it was so intense. Like, Hayes was just, like, shaking and sweating, and every man is looking at him just to, like, say the word. You know, if he says, I'm not going to listen to you, Lockhart, then every man was going to be, like, taking the guns and, you know, go for the war, basically. But he said, you know, okay, I'm gonna... I felt like that was, like, his last straw. Like, I'm gonna give you one last chance, but if these motherfuckers are gonna attack us, then I'm, like, blowing this up.
Yeah. That was so intense. I was kind of disappointed at Hayes, though, for giving it up because he tells the guys, put your guns down. You know what I mean? But, later on he snaps, right? And I
Yeah.
think it was for that reason, like you said. He looked Lockhart in the eyes and he's like, if anything happens, it's going down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, Lockhart goes down to the jail and he finds Boston, and Boston is beaten badly and stuff like that. And, he says he can't find the other soldier. The police don't know where he is for whatever reason, right? And the other police officer who did the beating is locked up too as well.
Cross.
Yeah, Cross is locked up. And so Lockhart brings Boston down to the soldiers and says, on condition that you lie and tell them that everything is fine to keep the soldiers cool, I will get you out of jail. So Boston comes down, and when the soldiers see his face, they say, oh, shit, he got fucked up, for real. And so, yeah, the soldiers are like really, tripping off of what's happening right there. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that Boston was not gonna lie. And it's such a hard place to put someone, because if he says, I feel like if he says, okay, if he lies, then maybe he will prevent some sort of violence. But if he doesn't lie, then he's betraying his people, and that could also cause violence. So it's like putting everything on Boston.
Yeah.
So, and that's so annoying. Like, your kind is the one who started this whole thing when those police officers, attacked Boston.
Yeah.
And now you're sort of like putting all this responsibility on Boston. But I knew like he was gonna stick up for his people.
Yeah. So, when Boston decided to go down there and like they saw his face, I just thought it was funny when they all said, "Oh shit!" I thought that was hilarious though. That was really funny.
And it also looked like Boston was just tired.
Yeah,
he was just kind of like done with being pushed around. And also the whole thing happened when he was about to. We skipped this part, but. Basically, he was just walking down to Marie's house, and he had a ring on his hand, right? And he was about to, we guess, like, he was about to propose to Marie before going to the school together. So, and then, like, someone came up to him and said, this guy's in danger, and that's when he left.
Yeah.
And it's like, he was just about to propose, and then all this happened, and now he's in this, like, shithole situation.
So I kind of messed up the story a bit, but either way, basically the white folks come down and they start shooting at the camp where the soldiers are, and then Sergeant Hayes and the rest of the soldiers break back into the armory where the guns are and start passing the guns out to the soldiers to defend themselves. And Boston is there sort of like watching in the background. He takes a gun as well. And they end up going out marching in the city on August 23rd. What was it? August 23rd, 1917. And so on that night, the soldiers are like marching in ranks in files with their rifles up and everything like that. They see a white man on horseback, blow his ass back. They see a police officer, blow his ass. White folk come outside and say, hey now, how y'all doing? Blow his ass back. Everybody's getting clapped up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's pretty sick. It's pretty epic. There was this scene where Big Joe catches these white folks who are like shot up in this car, and he sees one of them is still alive, and Big Joe takes him out and starts slamming his head on the concrete and pavement and stuff like that. Boston doesn't fire his gun at all at anybody, but Walker is standing right beside him and like shooting at unarmed civilians and stuff like that. It gets pretty real. What'd you think about, that scene?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's always sad to see, like, civilians die and all, but at the same time, it's like this explosion of all this, like, suppression, all this psychological pressure, constantly having to worry about your life every single day, constantly have to worry about your friends, your family. And, it was like this catharsis of that. And then everyone just went mad because it's like, we can't take this anymore because we know they're coming for us. If we don't do this, then we're the ones who's going to be dead. Right. So it's like, it's so bad because I can't blame them, But at the same time, I feel bad for, the grandpa who got on the porch. But I know the grandpa is racist too.
Grandpa was out. He said, "Hey, what y'all niggers doing outside?" Bam, got his ass blew back.
Yeah, so it's like I'm like in the middle.
I like this movie in the sense that it makes those scenes where the soldiers do march outside in single file line, aerial shot, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It looks so, to some degree, it's like empowering to see that as a black man, right? To see unified black men standing up armed, fighting against white supremacy. I think that's like the psychic fantasy of so many black men who felt then disempowered and still feel disempowered now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think also, though, that scene shows the humanity that is lost, right? Especially later on in the film when, Boston says, I was looking at people and I was about to fire my gun, but when I saw a man when I looked at them, but they didn't see a man when they looked back at me. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So powerful. And, we don't see Boston kill anybody, but we see all the other guys take real glee and satisfaction in murdering these people, right? And in the real situation, like 11 civilians were killed, right? And, just to take myself out of this real quick, it's not okay to kill civilians ever, ever. It's not okay when they do it to us, and it's not okay when we do it to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, it shows how this film shows how the hate that you inflict on people sort of like comes back around, I guess. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that sentiment of becoming the monster when you are trying to fight the monster. Right. And it's like, I know it's not even to the same degree because, even though all of those lives matter, it's 11 people compared to, last week in St. Louis, they killed 19 black men. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm not trying to compare the quantities or anything,
mm-hmm.
but, I mean, it felt like a moment of you should have seen that coming,
mm-hmm.
and you should have act accordingly, but at the same time you feel sad. And I think, yes, there was some sort of satisfaction when those men were killing white people, but I feel like at the same time there was a sense of confusion and chaos because they were we're doing this, but at the same time we don't exactly know who to shoot.
Yeah.
Because there was a hesitation too at certain points in certain scenes when they were faced with civilians.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's another angle to this film that I think is important that a lot of us skip over by just thinking about this story as a black historical story, right? That teaches about racism. This is the story about how America's militarized society ends up hurting civilians, right? A few weeks ago, 2 U.S. soldier veterans, committed terrorist attacks in America. The people that commit the most, some of the people that commit a large disproportionate amount of abuse against their wives, girlfriends are former soldiers. The people that, commit some very heinous felony crimes are former veterans. Are veterans and former soldiers as well. You know what I mean? We live in a society that loves war and loves violence and glamorizes the military and the soldier. And, just taking race out of it, these men come back or already here broken and taught to follow orders and taught to use weapons at an extremely high capacity and level. And then we just sort of let them out in society. You know what I mean? Some of these military bases where a lot of these soldiers are stationed across the country, they have some of the highest amounts of sexual assaults and physical, altercations between people and domestic violence cases and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think just looking at this movie as a race film is not the only way to look at it. It also shows how, the war always comes back home. We send out all this violence in the world, and it always seems to come back and hurt us as citizens, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And, one of the things I was also thinking about during those scenes was that I felt like this movie also showed segregation segregation gives way to violence. Mm-hmm. Because if this was a group of mixed soldiers, there could have been some preventative measure. Mm-hmm. It could have been, let's not do this sort of way. Or, if they were a mixed group, maybe the mob wouldn't be able to come because they are a mixed group. Mm-hmm. And if they want to kill black people, then they would have to kill white people with them. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's something that they wouldn't do. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it also kind of highlights how desegregating our society is like so important.
Yeah.
Because it will literally prevent violence.
Yeah.
Because when one group is together all the time, it's easier to point them out. It's easier to find them. It's easier to target them. Mm-hmm. And when we are more diverse, it's, harder to do all those things.
That. Very true. Very true. Very good point as well. I mean, injustice always causes a blowback, right? And as much as they tried to dehumanize the black men here in this story, they're still men, and there's only so far you can push men in this case. But after the riot, not the riots, but basically the soldiers going on a killing spree, which I felt like could have been longer, you know what I mean? I felt like those scenes could have been longer because that's what everybody came for. We came to see some soldiers kill white folks. Wow. We came to see it, but it was kind of short. It's only like 15 minutes or so. Still impactful. The guys mess up because they end up killing a car full of U.S. soldiers. And when they see that happen, it's like, oh, shit. Oh, what are we going to do now? And then Hayes is like, it's over, boys. It's over. We're done. We're so done. And so, the soldiers are like marching out of town, like all sad and stuff like that. Hayes says, it's time. And Boston, I'm going to give you the honors of killing me. And he shakes every soldier's hand, and then Hayes commits suicide right in front of Boston. The guys are hiding out in the woods until the very next day they're found by other soldiers and all arrested. Any comments on that?
Yeah, that scene with Hayes committing suicide was also very powerful because he was like, I'm done after this point. I know what's gonna happen to a blackface like me. And I just don't want to go through that. And I felt like that was also showing just how much of a trauma this creates, just overall, living life as a black man, especially at that time, how much of a trauma it creates and multiple traumas. And this is how we get generational trauma also because, those people went through that and they saw horrific things. And they developed certain psychological diseases and disorders, which then passes on.
Yeah, but what did you think about the scene with Hayes' suicide? Because I think that scene sort of encapsulates my problem with this movie. That scene was done so very melodramatic in this Tubi fashion that made it unbelievable up until the moment he shot himself. And when he shot himself and they show it with Boston's shocked face, that encapsulates everything about this film. The moments leading up to it are sappy and weird and sentimental, but then the action when the actual thing hits, it's perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what did you think about any of that?
It was a bit sappy. I get it. Yeah. I mean, I agree in that part because for the most part, it felt weird for me because it was how are these people taking this so normally? Because today, suicide is such a big thing. And we would try to do everything to prevent that from happening, especially to our friends and family,
Yeah.
But it's also, I felt like the soldiers there were just so depressed and they knew what was coming for them. So they kind of, understood why Hayes wanted to kill himself. But yeah, the lack of emotional reciprocity was what made it a bit down for me.
Yeah, how nobody else was crying, right?
Yeah.
And how nobody else thought maybe we should kill ourselves.
Well, no, not that, but everyone was just okay and they shook hands. I was
But essentially, the guys all get arrested. Like I said, 3 months later, Norton comes down and talks to Boston. Is like, Boston, why did you do it? I should have never left you guys. I feel so bad about myself. And Boston's like, don't feel bad, because the same people that, think that I should be here, wouldn't accept me in officer training school, et cetera, something like that. Norton says to Boston, like, they need one witness who didn't discharge their weapon, and that's you, Boston. And you have the opportunity, if you testify now, you can get out of this predicament and go to officer training school and actually make a difference in people's lives. And then Boston just goes the fuck off. He has this whole entire rant and speech that was so epic. It was shot so good, so well. And yeah, he basically says, like, I am my men and my men are me, and stuff like that. I'm here to stand with them, and I'm not going to run away. And, we're all worth living, right? Because we just wanted to be treated like men and soldiers. And then he walks away and shakes his hand and calls his former colonel or lieutenant or commander Charles. He calls him by his first name. What did you think of those scenes?
Yeah, that scene was very powerful, and that was like, the ending sort of, not the ending, but like the last explosion we wanted. And we sort of see, like, I think maybe at this point we see Boston realize, like, no matter where he is, he's going to be treated as black. Mm-hmm. And, unfortunately in this world that he's living in, it's like, he will have to fight and stand up, and if worse comes to worse, he's going to have to die. Yeah. And it was just like him making peace with it. And also, like you said earlier, that speech he made about, like, when I look at these white men, I see men. But when they look at me, they don't see a man. Mm. So, like, that part was so, like, true and sad and emotional. And it sort of made Norton shut the fuck up. Mm-hmm. And he was like, okay, mm-hmm. I understand. Yeah. I really like that scene because, the way it's shot, too, with, this light behind the actor's head who plays Norton, Boston? Yeah, Boston. What's his name? Trey Byers. Yeah, Trey Byers. The way they do it, he looks just like Obama, man. I don't see it. He looks just like Obama. If they ever make an Obama biopic, this is top of the line, like, who you need to get, man. Shoe in right there. He would be, like, more attractive, Obama. Okay, yeah. we just had what's his name? Pierre. What's his name? Yeah, Aaron Pierre. Aaron Pierre was mascara Malcolm X twerking in that new Nat Geo show. Anyway, but. Yeah, I really like that scene, and it made me really give my final assessment of Boston as a character. He's a diva. He's a narcissist diva who wants to be. Oh my god! You should have seen Akdi's face right now. I think he's a diva who wants to. He gets a hard on off of being the righteous guy. You know what I mean? Why do you always shit on righteous guys? I don't shit on righteous people because I want to be righteous too. Okay, are you a diva too? No, but I just think the way it's done in this film. I'm not saying he should have snitched. That's not what I'm saying. I think he did the right thing. I'm just saying his motivation for doing it is like, wait, I don't have to kill anybody. I don't have to go and fight in war. I don't have to even be alive. I don't have to do nothing. I can get all the glory of being the right one by dying. Sign me up. How is that easy? That's not easy to decide to die. For him, in his mind, it is. I don't think so. It's not easy dying for anyone. It's not easy dying for anyone, but for something that can make you seem so right. Yes, but it's still not easy to literally decide that you're not going to exist anymore. Right. It doesn't matter for what. Like, that's hard. Right. I just think that was his motivation. You know what I mean? I know that. You want to hate on him. I don't want to hate on him. I like Boston's character. It's just... It's something about him that makes me think, like, this is the guy who would not make this decision if it was just him. If it was just him who was there, accused for this crime, he would try to do everything to get out of it.
But because he gets to be with a bunch of other black guys and he can feel like one of the brothers again, he's allowing this to happen.
Yeah. Well, what is wrong with wanting to be a group and wanting to defend the people who go through the same things as you?
Nothing at all. I'm not saying it's nothing at all. I'm just saying.
Why would that make him a diva?
I think it's diva. He's diva and narcissist motivated. He has the wrong way of getting motivated for the right thing. You know what I mean?
So.
Like it's like saying I'm gonna go to the Black Lives Matter rally and protest, but I'm going there also because there's like very cute girls. You know what I mean? I'm doing the right thing while I have the wrong motivation. No. I'm going to the pro-Palestine rally because I want an Arab baddie. You know what I mean? Like
that's not Boston. I don't think that's the same. What you're saying is like I'm only going to the BLM protest because other black guys are there, not because I actually think Black Lives Matter. Like it does not make sense.
I think that's some people went there for that. I think that's Boston's thing. He's motivated by that.
That's not Boston.
Yes.
Boston is like I think Black Lives Matter. I want to fight for it, and plus also my brothers are there too. That's Boston.
Right. It's noble. It's noble, and I really like that last speech. I'm just saying I think his motivations, because if he was really about liberation, I think he would bust his gun. He would have busted his gun. Like, this is the thing. I feel I'm making this point that I think he's motivated just by the idea of being a martyr rather than a soldier for the cause, because he didn't bust his gun when the riot actually happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because he had trauma like everyone else in there. But at the same time, you cannot, I feel like you can't blame someone for not deciding to be violent. Mm-hmm. There are people who are better at passive activism.
Right. I'm just saying.
Not everyone has to fight for the same cause in the same way. Mm-hmm. We can fight for the same cause, but we can do it in different ways.
I just think of this Nas line that says something like, when we start the revolution, are you going to do the shooting? You know what I mean? A lot of people talk about, uplifting the race and, doing better for black folks. But, if it really came down to it and it was that race war time, if it was race war time, would you really bust your gun? And I think Boston proved it. I'm scared. Come on, guys.
No, I think that's a very closed way of looking at revolution, because I don't think everyone should be forced to bust out their guns. I think there are people who will do that, which is fine. But at the same time, I don't think we should blame the people who won't do it, but still are for the cause. You can't expect everyone to pick up guns. In Israel now.
We can't expect everyone, but we can expect a literal soldier named Corporal Lieutenant Boston, Corporal Boston, to pick it up and bust.
Okay, the circumstances matter. You're taking it out of context. But anyway, just because, for example, in Israel, does every Israeli pick up the gun and kill the Palestinians? No. There are some who do it, and then there are some who don't. So, that was a bad example. But anyway.
That's very bad. You could have easily made that, analogy in reverse, but you really committed to that.
Sorry, free Palestine. I'm not doing that. Hashtag free Palestine.
Yeah.
I'm for Palestinian cause. Anyway, what I was saying is that I don't think you should put how people protest and how they defend what they believe in. I don't think it should be put in a box where we say, oh, you're not up for it if you're not picking up a gun. Oh, you're not up for it if you're not killing a person. I think there are so many ways to be in the fight.
Yeah, I agree with you, too. I agree with you. Not everybody has to pick up their gun.
And I don't think that makes them a coward. I
think in Boston's case, of course, not killing civilians is not cowardly. But when you see those racist officers who have been, brutalizing y'all, and the other racist white folks who have been doing horrible things to the black soldiers that you were in charge of, you know what I mean? If they've been busting your guns at you and threatening to kill y'all, that seems cowardly not to bust back.
I don't agree. Because Boston is also the same guy who arrested a white man, risking his life, and he's the same man who tried to save the woman and the baby and the other soldiers who attacked the racist cops.
Right.
So I don't think it applies to him.
I see.
Even his situation. But
I see.
Yeah, let's finish it.
Let's wrap it up. So essentially, there's this trial that happens, and one of the younger soldiers, who is basically a kid, maybe he's like 18 or 19 years old, he ends up becoming the informant on behalf of the government. What was his name? Can you find it? Well, either way, while he's testifying, crying on the stand, we also find out
Lucky.
that the other soldier who was arrested with Boston actually isn't dead. They thought he was dead, but he was actually beat up and thrown somewhere in the jail. And he comes to court with this massive scar on his face. And so, yeah, the snitch is like pointing out people on the stand, and he retells the story that basically the soldiers made up this whole accusation that there was a racist white folks coming to get them, and they created this whole ruse where Big Joe yells, "He's coming," or "They're coming," to get people riled up and then go get guns and go into town and start shooting folks, right? And so then the judge asks the soldiers, like, what do you have to say for yourself? And Boston stands up, Walker stands up, Big Joe stands up, and all the other soldiers stand up, and they start saying, "I am a man. I'm a man. I'm a man." And everybody in the courtroom is just so inspired. And they learn the errors of their ways, and racism was solved, and the soldiers, are found innocent, and that's the end of the movie. What did you think?
That's not the end of the movie. Anyway, the guy who snitched on them, his name is Lucky.
Mm-hmm.
And when Lucky goes up to the stand, Boston says, he's just a kid. Other people say like, "Oh, he's the snitch," And I feel like Boston understands he didn't shoot at the riot, and Lucky is, kind of snitching on them here. So I feel like he understands that, black liberation doesn't come in a box. I feel like, because maybe, Lucky might end up
going
doing
to officer,
good things.
He might go to officer training school.
Or even just like as simple as this, that how many soldiers were executed? 17?
19.
Instead of 20 soldiers, it's 19 soldiers. I don't know.
So he just picked out the people that should die. Hey, kill Walker. He roasted me one time in the lunchroom. Hey, that nigga Boston too pretty. Kill him.
No.
Okay, Big Joe cool.
Stop. No. I mean, we can see like Lucky when he's doing his speech and when he's doing his accusations, he's like crying like a baby.
Yeah.
And he's scared and he's guilty. And like, for example, when he speaks about Boston, he says that he actually didn't kill anybody, but he picked up the gun, and we all looked up to him. And when he picked up the gun, we were done. We knew that we were gonna do this riot. So it's like he's like praising him, but at the same time, like
he said we all looked up to Boston. He's the smartest one we've ever known.
Yeah, and I felt bad for Lucky too, but of course it was a powerful scene when they all stood up. Yeah.
No, when Lucky is crying on the stand, it was a powerful tear, man, because he really looked like a full-on rat, like a full-on stool pigeon snitch bird. And so he's sitting up there crying and stuff, and everybody's just shaking their head, man, like, "Oh, no, not Little Lucky. And he has a snitch face, too. You know what I mean? He has that, like, eyes gonna tell face. I'm gonna tell mama face.
I swear, if he's Nigerian...
Is he Nigerian? Oh, wait, who's the character? Lorenzo Yerby. Lorenzo Yerby plays him. I believe he was in The Wire. I don't know if that's true, but I believe he was in The Wire.
Okay.
But either way, that scene was powerful. Basically, the army comes in and says that, many of the soldiers are going to get life in prison. Like 41 soldiers get life in prison. And basically, like 12 of them are like executed that day. And then a year later, like more are executed as well. The final scene is like, the soldiers are like put into the caskets after they've been hanged. And we see Big Joe's body, Walker's body, and Boston's body. And they're just buried in like these white caskets with like this aerial shot showing all of them. Colonel Norton delivers a letter to Marie, and we hear Boston's final words. And Boston essentially says to Marie, like, I did this for your children, for your future husband, for yourself, to make a better world for black people. And Marie ends up moving out of Texas and I guess like going to New York because she like, the last scene is her on a train. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's it. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, that aerial shot and, like, them in the caskets, that was a powerful ending. Mm-hmm. I really liked that. And I felt like I shed some tears when Marie was reading her letter. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you noticed this, but when Marie was on the bus, he was sitting with the white folks.
Those weren't white folks.
Yes, they were. There was a white lady behind her.
Okay, those are light-skinned black folks. But I think that was an optical illusion. I think that what you thought is intentional. The director purposely put light-skinned black folks there behind Marie to give the illusion to later on segregation will no longer be there.
Okay, why wouldn't he just put white people, like I said?
Because that's unreal. It's like there was still segregation.
York, it's not.
I think those were not white folks again. I'll look again.
But
anyway. And once again, race is not real. So, of course, like, you know.
Yeah, but, you know, I thought it was a powerful ending. And, yeah, I liked it. I liked the ending. It made me tear up a little bit. Mm-hmm. So, I don't have any problems with it. And it was a sad ending, you know. Mm-hmm. But I guess, in a way, because of Marie, was kind of happy as well.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I really like that last scene, and you know, the last 20 minutes of the movie might make you cry, I would say.
Were you tearing up?
I was not tearing up this time I watched it. I just remember the first time I watched it, like I was like spellbound by the last parts of it, you know, because this movie had a big effect on me when I saw it when it came out. But now that I've watched it again, some years removed, and we've watched a lot of really good films. Yeah. And I don't think you can watch this film after Glory and be like, oh, that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If anything, watch this first and then watch Glory.
Yeah, watch Glory. Yeah, Glory after this, because as great as Trey Byers is, all right, those are black folks.
Those are not black folks. These are two white men.
All right, well,
sitting with black women.
Okay, those are black folks. Those are black folks.
No, they're not.
In this. Either way, I want everybody to go to the 24th and watch literally the last scene. I might put it in the thumbnail because I think those are black folks in there. But I think that point is to show, like, you know, Boston's sacrifice was for a reason, you know? Yeah. So that's what I think.
And maybe it didn't change the world. It didn't end racism. It didn't end white supremacy, but it still made a difference. Yeah. So that we watch it today and we think about it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, it literally changed Derek Russo's mindset.
Yes, it changed Derek Russo's mindset. And, you know, there is some justice for the 24th. I'm going to wrap up this review with this piece of news. So, literally, about 2 years ago, in November 2023, the Army set aside all 110 convictions. It acknowledged the servicemen had not received fair trials in the racist climate of the time period. The Army gave all the men honorable discharges, enabling any of their descendants to receive military benefits. So, you know, justice comes, but justice comes very late. I mean, you know, all the people related to this story are definitely dead, long and gone, right? But it sort of like clears up the legacy, you know what I mean, of these people. It's just sad that, you know, there are guys who spent their whole life in prison, right? Because there were 41 guys who got life in prison, and then they die, and then they're found not guilty, you know, 40 years after they die. You know what I mean? But
and imagine like the prison back then for black people.
Oh God, chain gang. So yeah, that's that. And that was done under what administration, guys? I have to point that out. 2023. That was definitely not the Trump administration. Just for black MAGA out there. You know what I mean? So elections have consequences. And I just got to say that this is a good film. Not as good. There's some Tubi-esque moments in it. The themes with Boston's like light-skinnedness are a bit awkward. At the end, when he gives like Marie like a promise ring, it gave the film a little bit of like like sappy Christian movie elements as well. Because promise rings are these rings that Americans give each other.
No, but he said use this ring to pay for your life.
He said use this ring to bring back your purity as well. Do you know what promise rings are?
Yeah, it's like you don't have sex.
Yeah. And so it made me think like, oh God, somebody funded this film with like Christian fundamentalist, like super pastor money. You know what I mean? Like,
okay.
So
I did not get that idea.
I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. I felt it. So I really like this film. I like it, but it's not as good as I remember. Like I said, I'm gonna give it a solid 7. A solid 7, and that, no more, no less. I suggest everybody watch it though and learn more about this amazing event in U.S. history because it bolsters the idea that Black people always fought for our defense against white supremacy. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah, I liked it overall. I thought there were like great moments of cinematography there, like with the caskets and like the last scene of Boston and Norton, for example. Definitely like Hayes was a highlight. Acting was overall like good, I think. Yeah, there were some moments that maybe like took you out of it, but it's a compelling story, so you can't really go wrong with it. I'm gonna give it a 7.5. Mm-hmm. And yeah. That's it.
All right. So yeah, one more thing I have to add. Woodrow Wilson, who was often cited as one of the most racist presidents, and like I don't know how racist you have to be one of the most racist presidents. He commuted some of the soldiers that were sentenced to death to life in prison, and that was back in 1918. Another thing I think you want to read about Kevin Willmott, some of the other films he's made.
Yeah.
He's done Black Klansman, The Five Bloods, and Chirac. So he's worked a lot as a writer with Spike Lee. But some of his films are good. Some of them are very weird. Others are very interesting. He also made this mockumentary called The Confederate States of America that I thought was very good. I watched it a few years ago. And he's an interesting guy. Very interesting guy.
Okay, yeah.
He also won an Oscar.
Okay.
Sorry.
No. That's okay.
All right. So yeah, I think we'll wrap it up here. And any last comments?
No. Go watch this movie or any other historical Black movie for the Black History Month.
There we go.
And put your thinking cap on.
Yes.
And don't vote for Trump again, please.
Yes. Well, he's running for a third term, We're going to have a 3-term dictator president for
we'll
life.
see if everyone's alive after this first term, because it's totally a shit show, but we'll talk about that other time.
Yes, indeed. All right, y'all be easy out there. If you have any films you want us to review, put it in the comments. And episode 106, Simon and Akdi. Peace.